Hey, Amazon sellers. I want to share something that can completely change the way you run your business. For the last decade, I've built a world-class Amazon team that's helped me sell over $50 million on the platform and scale multiple seven-figure brands. Now, that same team and process is available to help you build, grow, and scale your Amazon business. This is not a course. It's not a DIY program. It's done for you Amazon growth handled by proven experts. We handle everything from listing optimization and SEO to PPC, inventory, catalog management, promotions, review strategy, compliance, and new product launches. So you can focus on running your business while we handle the rest. If you're ready to turn your Amazon channel into a profit machine, visit the link in the show notes, calendly.com/firingtheman/Amazon, and book a time to see if this is a good fit for you.
Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast, a show for anyone who wants to be their own boss. If you sit in a cubicle every day and know you are capable of more, then join us. This show will help you build a business and grow your passive income streams in just a few short hours per day. And now your hosts, serial entrepreneurs David Schomer and Ken Wilson.
Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. Today's guest is someone who needs no introduction to many of our listeners because this is her third appearance on the show. Chelsea Cohen has built a reputation as a thoughtful entrepreneur, strategic leader, and someone who consistently brings practical insights that business owners can immediately apply to their own companies. Every time she's joined us, our audience has responded incredibly well because she doesn't just talk theory. She shares real-world examples, lessons learned, and the strategies that helped her navigate the challenges of building and growing a successful business, So Stocked. A lot has happened since her last appearance, and today we're going to dive into what's changed, what she's learned, and what opportunities she's excited about, as well as advice she has for entrepreneurs looking to grow their businesses while creating more freedom and fulfillment in their lives. Chelsea, welcome back. You are among an elite list of people that have been on the show 3 times.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I love coming on this podcast for sure. It's always a lot of fun.
Oh, very good. So fill us in. Since your last appearance on the podcast, what are some of the biggest developments in your business and in life?
Yeah. So in business, So Stocked, which was acquired in 2022 by Carbon 6, was in last year, about a little over a year ago, acquired by a company called SPS Commerce. So that has kind of been one of the bigger pieces of development in business. It's been very interesting. It's a company that is publicly traded. It has 100 quarters of growth, so successive growth. So it's very different and interesting and insightful to move from, I've never been in the corporate world, to moving into the corporate world, but still maintaining a lot of the individual freedom that we have within So Stocked. So still running So Stocked, still able to develop that, but then moving into discussions around how we continue to integrate and improve on maybe the relationships between the various different tools. So that's been kind of the biggest development.
Well, very nice. Now, for people that are unfamiliar with So Stocked, can you share a little bit about that and what it does?
Sure. Yeah. So Stocked is inventory management for Amazon 3P and more importantly, inventory forecasting. So that's really the biggest strength of So Stocked is it actually will allow you to forecast up to a year into the future and customize it, adding, the various different elements, which include things like last year's sales, adding your marketing plans, all of these different elements. And we've gone a step further in adding fees to that. So storage fees, if we can project your sales velocity, we can project storage fees. So we do that. And then we've started to do some profit forecasting, which is one of the subjects I'm very passionate about, as profit tends to be right now one of the harder portions of the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for our listeners, I use SoStocked. I have used SoStocked for about 5 years now and am a huge fan of it. It makes our inventory planning process so much easier, and I'm excited to dig into these. And so let's focus on the profitability. And you had mentioned fees.
Mhm.
For any seasoned Amazon sellers that are listening, they know it's not a single line item of fees. And so what are some constraints, or what are some fees that Amazon sellers are running into that they should at least be aware of?
Yeah. So obviously there are fees that can't be avoided. Fees that most people are most aware of, fulfillment fees and referral fees. Fulfillment fees, those should be monitored, and because Amazon will change those fees. So if you're not paying attention, you might be being charged. We've even seen identical SKUs or identical ASINs within the same parent, which are identical products but maybe a different color, and the fees being different because it gets scanned and then it gets tagged as a higher fee. So those fees can actually be audited, and that's an opportunity. You can also repackage product. We've seen a lot of people doing vacuum packing. So rethinking those general fees, but the biggest fee constraints that are overlooked are the storage fees and the aged inventory fees. And those are some of the biggest areas that we point out are not only what fees are you being charged today, but what is your potential liability over the next year that you're not foreseeing because you're not really looking at the products that have just been sitting there not gathering revenue. So you tend to kind of push them aside, but they could be a time bomb waiting to go off.
Absolutely. And one thing I will add to that is, so I love the long-term storage fee tool that SoStocked has, and it's absolutely a part of our like monthly planning. What I have found is that running into capacity constraints is another one that Amazon sellers are running into, where they may have some slow moving inventory and their top sellers are obviously selling out. And when it's time to replenish those, there's no room. And so can you speak to, how are smart sellers addressing this as it relates to just running a healthy Amazon account?
Yeah. So keeping a view on that, the SoStock can create custom dashboards, but we also have default dashboards, and filtering by some of your overstock inventory. What are those products that you have over 90 days of stock? What are those products that are maybe, less revenue generating? And coming up with a plan on a regular basis to move through that inventory. So not to just ignore it, but to know that if you move through that inventory, it will improve your capacity, not just in clearing out the excess inventory that's sitting there, but in increasing your velocity so that you actually receive higher capacity capacity limits. So having that be part of the regular planning and the regular strategy is extremely important in being strategic in your marketing.
Okay. Okay. For sellers that are, so that they get SoStocked, they identify ASINs that are approaching long-term storage fees. What are some methods once they've identified that, now it's time to take action. What are some things that they can do, and what would you recommend they do?
Mhm. Yeah, things like just, coupons or discounts, if they have an email list, they can do a sale through their email list, lowering prices to be more competitive, exploring external traffic might be a way of doing that. And then doing bundle deals, taking your best sellers and maybe making an image or making a coupon deal to show that there is the ability to, buy these other products. Maybe the other products are similar, but they don't have the visibility.
hmm One of the things that I really like about that tool is because you do have visibility into the future,
Mhm.
you can be proactive on it. One thing I can personally attest to is I've got a container that's ready to ship in China.
Mhm.
I go to generate shipping labels and I don't have capacity. Now I need to dispose of or, act quickly. And oftentimes like disposal is, or, returning inventory back to your warehouse is a lever that you can pull. I'm not saying that it's the best lever, but it
Mhm.
oftentimes feels wasteful. And whenever I've been in that situation, I've often thought, man, I needed to be thinking about this 2 to 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I really like that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a lever. That's not a lever. That's kind of one of those where we like to use it as a last resort because it gets quite expensive. Disposal costs the same as removal. Some other ones that could be a bit more cost effective if they don't work as quickly, so that your scenario is not necessarily wouldn't necessarily work for that. But Amazon has a liquidations program
Mhm.
where you could potentially come ahead. They still charge you a fee and they take a percentage of the liquidation cost, but you could end up making some cash back. And it's not going to be profit, but it's going to be some cash back rather than money out of your pocket. It has to be something that qualifies, and they don't always find buyers for it. But there's that, and then there's also donating inventory, which still costs you money, but it ends up potentially being an additional write-off if you're in the US.
Hey guys, I want to take a minute to thank today's sponsor, the book Cash Flow by Scott Brandley and DJ Sprague. I've spent the last decade building e commerce brands and over 20 years running businesses. So I've read a lot of books on growth and profitability. Most of them explain the problems, but they don't give you many real world solutions. Cash flow is different. This book uncovers the hidden leaks inside your business, things like false payment declines, friction in your checkout, missing trust signals, and operational inefficiencies that quietly crush your conversion rate. And a lot of these losses never even show up on your P&L. I'm a retired CPA and I review my numbers constantly. And even I had a few aha moments reading this book. If you run an e commerce business, this is one worth checking out. There's a link in the show notes where you can grab a copy of Cash Flow, CASHFLO, and learn how to start plugging those hidden profit leaks. Now, back to the episode. I didn't even think about that as being yeah, absolutely. That would be a write off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. I just had a light bulb go off. Anyway, um, you had mentioned profitability is something that you're incredibly focused on, and it has been my experience amongst engaging with other Amazon sellers that you're not the only one that's has concerns about profitability. Like it's
Yeah.
something that's very very common. What are as you're engaging with Amazon sellers? Where do you see the biggest profit leaks or holes in the boat, so to say?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, storage fees is a big one. I think the biggest oversight is really not having oversight, not knowing which products are costing money. So just leaving them in the catalog or continuing to replenish them, not realizing and doing an audit frequently enough. You've got tariff fees that have come in, you've got price changes. Profitable products last year may be unprofitable this year. And especially when you have a large catalog, it's very difficult to find those needles in the haystack. A lot of the industry is moving toward contribution margins, which is much better than looking at kind of just the bottom line. And contribution margins essentially breaks down your expenses um, in terms of percentages along the different cost centers. So, I want to be at 70% profitability after my landed cost. I want to be, at 50% after my fees, 20% after my ads, that sort of thing. So that's very helpful, and it's very different from kind of the wild old days when we used to be able to sell and, we were always profitable. We didn't really pay attention to a lot of those pieces as much. But a lot of the contribution margins are done on a catalog level. So they're not broken down on an ASIN level. And then there's a whole a whole piece that kind of opens up where it's not, there's some holes in the logic, even when you're looking on an ASIN level. And those holes are the things that I really have taken a lot of time kind of diving in and figuring out, how do we discover those holes?
Mm-hmm. So I like the granular look at profitability. As a retired CPA, that's definitely in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
One thing I think a lot of people, especially on product launches, is setting that initial price. And I'm curious, when people are doing back of the napkin math,
Uh-huh.
on my $100 product, what can I expect in terms of fees?
Uh-huh.
That would be your referral fee, your FBA fee, maybe even fold in pay-per-click advertising. But what
Uh-huh.
percentage is going back into Amazon?
What percentage that you're actually paying them?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like something like it's between like 60 and 70%. There's just there, and if you start using, the supply chain by Amazon, it's even more. As time has gone on, they've just taken a bigger and bigger piece of the pie. Now they're your 3PL if you're using AWD, and if you're shipping, they're also taking that cut. The only pieces, at the end of the day that they don't tend to take are, your supplier fees and your overhead. Um, and, really and that's been the goal, is how do we take more money you know, out of the same pool.
Mm-hmm. I was looking at this metric for one brand that I own and manage, and in the last 12 months, it was 58% for that particular brand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's before you include unit cost or shipping to get the
Right.
product to the end user. And so one of the things that, typically in business, you'd say, okay, if you're increasing costs, just raise your price.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always work. And so can you speak to that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, increasing price doesn't work when you have other competitors who have lower prices.
Mhm.
So, you have to look at, sometimes it's weighing out what are the profit dollars at the end of the day, and not focusing on revenue as the sole driver of your decisions. So, we've got a client that we're working with, and they have had to increase their prices, and their revenue does decrease. So, in the general view of things, oh, our revenue is decreasing, it didn't work. But being able to look at, okay, we are profiting more for every unit. Our revenue may be decreasing, but our profit is increasing. So it can work in that view, but then in other ways, a lot of times it can also not work, based, to your point. What do you do then is you have to start looking at the various different line items in the unit economics. And that's where I've been doing a lot of work, is how do you identify those things and how do you start to rein them in?
Absolutely. Yeah, for one thing that doesn't fit perfectly or squarely into a spreadsheet is, say you have the option between selling 100 units at 10% or 50 units at 20% margin.
Mhm. Yeah.
Selling the 50 units is less work. It's less shipments booked. It's less
Uh-huh.
customer service. And that's something that I think people don't think about. We want to be increasing revenue. We're
Mhm.
constantly in that mode, but kind of pivoting and focusing more on profitability, I think is the absolute move if you want to stay in business. And so
Mhm.
if someone were to come to you and say, Chelsea, I am I, every dollar that comes in goes out. I'm selling at break even. I feel like I'm a hamster just running on a wheel. We take a
Mhm.
look at my account. What are going to be some of the first things that you're looking at?
Yeah. So first and foremost, the storage fees, because that's the area when a person comes and they say, "I don't know why. It doesn't make sense." They generally understand how much they're paying their supplier because they, you know, do the wires. They're generally understanding how much they're paying in terms of ads. They have less control in terms of fulfillment, but the storage fees, it can end up being, a couple of years ago we saw a ton of people posting, Amazon took $25,000 out of my account in November. Well, you had aged inventory fees and you had peak storage fees. So that's the piece that generally people don't understand. We had someone come to us, said Amazon was taking $14,000 a month out of their account.
Hmm.
That's a huge red flag in terms of your profitability. So that's where I would start, is looking at, are you carrying dead weight that's just taking money out of your pocket? And how do we move that inventory? Removals might not be the solution because they're so costly. And sometimes a removal will cost more than 6 months worth of aged inventory fees. So it's important not to have that be the knee-jerk reaction, which sometimes, and I'll mention it and all of a sudden, the seller turns around and they've removed it. I'm like, no, you shouldn't have done that. So looking at the storage fees and then looking at making sure they've done a wasted ad spend audit. That's one of the faster ones, because storage fees and storage and inventory in general I call it a slow boat to turn. So that's a long term. Short term would be advertising. And then also doing an audit. We have a free tool that does an audit regarding any opportunities to reduce your product into a lower fee tier. So whether it's off by a slight amount and Amazon has just bumped you into a fee tier that's higher, and you can actually go and you can request for products to be remeasured. And if they come back and they're remeasured, you can submit to get 90 days worth of that overcharge returned to you. So there are fulfillment fee solutions. Um, there are ways to maybe go back to your supplier and get new dimensions, reduce the product to gain, let's say, another 15 cents by moving into a lower fee tier. So all of those things, just looking at all of the line items. And then, of course, making sure reimbursements are being done and being done in a timely manner. Something that our company SPS does is, the reimbursements. So I think most people are doing that at this point, but it's surprising when you find they aren't, or they aren't they don't understand that there are a lot of different areas where you could be doing that, like AWD. AWD makes a lot of mistakes. And so you can go and it's a little bit harder and a little bit less effective, but you can go and request reimbursement for the mistakes that AWD makes. And I think a lot of people don't understand that either.
Myself included. I didn't even think about AWD.
Yeah.
And now that will dovetail nicely into my next question.
Hmm.
In a healthy Amazon brand, how does AWD fit into the picture, if at all?
Yeah. So AWD, there's fees that can be avoided with AWD. I never recommend it as a total solution. I think you need to keep your own 3PL as well. Otherwise, you're giving everything over to Amazon. And we know how Amazon can lose things. We know how Amazon, can get backed up and all of a sudden they say, we're not taking any more stock, before Prime Day or whatever it is. So but it can definitely be a card that can be played. You can avoid inbound shipping fees. So if you've got products where you don't want to use Amazon optimized, because Amazon optimized, in terms of inbound placement fees, there's Amazon optimized keeps you from having to send in or having to pay inbound shipping fees. You have to send to 5 or 6 locations though. So that may be expensive in terms of the shipping cost. Even if you're avoiding inbound fees, you have to look at shipping cost versus inbound fees. Am I saving money by doing Amazon optimized? And Amazon or AWD can be a lever to pull if the fees that AWD charges are less than the fees uh, that you would pay for inbound or for shipping to 5 different locations. So that's one of the opportunities. It also gives you a little bit of extra if you're running at low capacity. You don't have enough capacity. You can send some of your spillover stock to AWD and they will send stock in. So even if you don't get the inventory in on time, in because you don't have the space, AWD will continue to fulfill and to send inventory in. So it kind of can override a little bit that capacity restraint.
Okay. Now, if the way I have my inventory set up, and
Mhm.
I am inviting you to critique it.
Okay.
I put my products into 3 different categories. I have my fast movers, which I try
Mhm.
to keep about 60 days of inventory on hand at any
Mhm.
given time. I've got my medium velocity products,
Mhm.
which I try to keep 50 days at any given time.
Mhm.
And then my slow movers, which would be 30 to 40 days at any
Mhm.
given time.
Yeah.
My goal here is I obviously never want to go out of stock on my top sellers, and I have that cushion. However, I don't want to have too much because my fast movers can be seasonal. They can slow down. I can have listing issues, and all of a sudden, if I had it at say 180 days, I would be knocking on the door of long-term storage fees
Right.
potentially. And so, what would be for a healthy Amazon account if they were to put their products into those 3 different tranches?
Mhm.
What would you recommend for just a target?
Uh-huh. Yeah, we say no more than 90 days. It depends upon your supply chain and your lead times. So if you're sending direct to Amazon from, China, 90 days is usually the good rule of thumb because something could go wrong, right? You have some sort of delay, you missed the boat, have to wait another week. So having that extra buffer is important. I think 60 days or 75 days is a good, if you've got external inventory sitting, locally, that's a good way to go about it. Um, if you've got, products that maybe could tend to spike, having a little bit more on the higher side is important. As far as the mid, sounds good. My concern would be with the slower sellers. I'm not sure what we refer to as slower sellers, so it really depends on what the person's velocity is. But between 30 and 40, you can start to skate toward the side of low inventory fees. Low inventory fees, I mean, if you are truly between 30 and 40, you won't tend to hit that, but you could get a bit close. If your average is below 28 days of stock, you start to incur low inventory fees. And it is an average. So it's a 30-day average and a 90-day average are compared. So between 30 and 40, you're good. But if you start creeping down consistently with products, you could move into the range where you're paying those low inventory fees, which are basically a fulfillment fee on each product that gets shipped out. It's an additional fee because Amazon says you don't have a wide enough spread across the country. We've had to express or ship your products, so we're going to charge you for those express fees. So that's essentially the logic behind it. Another thing that Amazon starts to do when you start dipping below that 30-day is something called geo-ranking, where if your products are, let's say, concentrated on the coasts and in the middle of the country, your product may be ranked lower than, in the coastal areas. You probably, if you're in California, if you're in Florida, you're probably not seeing this when you're searching your product. It's something that if you change the, shipping zone, right, your zip code, you could probably start saying, okay, my listings are actually showing up lower for specific keywords because Amazon doesn't want me to sell it because I don't have it. They'd have to express ship it. So all of that, when you've got low inventory, you've got low coverage, you've got very sparse coverage, Amazon will start to, effectively reduce your volume or your visibility in those areas, but they'll also, if you get too low, charge you those extra fulfillment fees.
I was not even aware that low inventory fees existed. If somebody wanted to look on their account and see, am I being charged this, where would they go?
So my favorite report in all of Amazon is called the FBA Inventory Report. It's if you go to fulfillment, if you go to reports, fulfillment, and then in the inventory, you have to click more, and it reveals it at the very bottom. And it's a treasure trove of information. It's like almost 3 alphabets long in terms of number of columns. It has all the aged inventory data. So you can see which of your products are, let's say over 180 days, which of them are over, over 9 months. You get into that's the biggest area of risk is, when your inventory is over 9 months, it shoots up to you're paying $5.45 per cubic foot on top of regular fees. But low inventory fees will also be found there. You'll be able to pull, are there any products that are being, charged low inventory fees? And it'll give you your days of supply. So you could see a product that, okay, I've got, on average 42 days for this one. Oh, this one's got 31. I probably should pay attention to, increasing my supply on that. So that's where you would go. But you would also see some products are marked as exempt. And those products are, the general rule is if you have sold 7 units or less in the past 20 days, that product is exempt. So if you've got very slow sellers, you don't really have to worry about those products getting, 2 units, 3 units here or there. You don't have to really worry about low inventory fees for that.
Okay. Now, a little bit earlier, you had mentioned a wasted ad spend audit. Is this like a tool that you recommend, or is this just kind of taking a hard look at your PPC, or can you go deeper on that?
Yeah. So it's something that used to be done in one of the companies that Carbon 6 had. I don't think it's done any longer, but I think it's something that agencies will offer, maybe some softwares will offer, and it's identifying which products, and you could probably, even do this yourself. It's a little bit tedious, but which products are using keywords that have, had, let's say, whatever, 3 clicks, 5 clicks, and had no sales, right? If you're doing auto campaigns, going through and seeing, are there keywords that are being used that are just, they should be, turned into negative keywords. We were selling pepper grinder several years back, and electric kept coming up. We did not have an electric pepper grinder, so we had to negative keyword those. So it's negative keywords. It's creating guidelines around how many clicks am I willing to get before I say this keyword is not something that I should be spending on. Ones that have really high ad spend. So doing an audit yourself or working with an agency that does one of those, and doing it consistently. So it's not just kind of a one and done. It's consistent.
Okay. Very good.
I bet AI could probably help you with that too.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And that leads me to my next question. As we sit here talking in June 2026, AI is moving at an incredibly rapid pace. And my experience, it's doing things that I never would have anticipated 6 months ago.
Yeah.
How are you using AI? How are you seeing smart Amazon sellers using AI?
So right now, in terms of AI, I've used it a lot in problem solving. So, and in helping me to develop out concepts, having an idea of a concept of, I have this problem and I think this is the solution. Are there gaps within my logic for that? Right. I don't have this data available. Amazon only gives me, this amount of data. How do I, resolve that? So those types of things in terms of building out the platform and the features specifically for us. And then I'm starting to dive into, MCP, maybe an MCP integration. We're starting to look into that because we do have some endpoints exposed for stocked. So we have data available that can be accessed. And I've just been doing research on, people have asked for an open API. And an open API, I've done the research. It's, a month-long process. But MCP is such, to my understanding, we're starting to dive into it. But my understanding, that's something where you expose endpoints, you write a little bit of language, on the app side, on the, the AI side, and then you kind of connect it together. And could be a few days you put something together. So that's something that can create opportunities to take the data and not only to feed the data. You ask a question, which of my products are going to stock out, but wanting to get to a point where it's making smart recommendations, taking several different data points, not just, stock levels, but stock levels, fees, that sort of thing. How do we take all the data that we have with the forecasting, the fees and profit, and turn it into something that can advise people on what to do, beyond just here's the data. It's here's the data and AI is going to tell you what to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The API, the open API integrations have been, I was using some between Shopify and Claude the other day, and it was pretty incredible with what it did. It also feels, from a business owner standpoint, kind of feels like you may have a rogue employee that is doing its own thing, without a ton of oversight. And so, good and bad, I would say.
Yeah,
but,
you have to be careful. Like that's one of the things, in terms of to put together an MCP or any sort of AI validating, making sure that there's no hallucinations and that the data can be trusted. I think for a while, smart sellers are going to experiment with it, but also verify, are the numbers correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, okay. Well, anything else that we want to cover today? This has been a great deep dive on inventory management, on profitability. Anything else that you think is worth covering?
Um, I I don't know that. I guess just one of the things that has been interesting, tariffs, obviously, is something. But one of the things that I read recently was an executive order was signed a couple of days ago that will require sellers or importers to have to reveal their ownership, have to have physical assets within the United States, have to have specific identifiers. No longer can they be hidden, right? You can't have these shell corporations where you've got people, lying about the value of the state inventory, uh, taking money out of the United States without any sort of, backing. There's a lot of money that's leaving the country through e-commerce that people aren't paying taxes. So if you've got people that are not paying taxes, they're paying lower tariffs because they're lying on the paperwork because it doesn't really matter. There's no ramifications for that. They're hiding their identity. They're in another country that doesn't fall under the U.S. jurisdiction. All of those things the executive order essentially starts to tear those things down. So the U.S. sellers are going to have a greater advantage uh, because the playing field is starting to be evened out, which I think is a huge step in the right direction, and what should have been done instead of, the tariffs that penalized U.S. citizens.
Agree. And to me, that is a step in the right direction on you're providing legitimacy to e-commerce in general. There's a lot of nameless, faceless transactions. I am dealing this week with counterfeit sellers.
Mm,
If we were in the same room, there's no way
yeah.
they would do that. However, I don't even know their name. I don't know what country they're from. I get
Mhm.
their listings taken down, and the next day they have it up under another brand, and it's incredibly frustrating. And so,
Yeah.
no, I think that'll be great. Anything that, obviously, as a U.S. seller, I'm advocating for U.S. sellers like myself, and
Yeah.
so I think that'll be a good thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So I found that very interesting and hopeful because, with the tariffs, I was just, I saw so much damage with that. I mean, everyone did. And that's been walked back, but not nearly to the extent that it should be. I thought that U.S. Sellers should have been exempt from some of that. I thought small business. In my opinion, there should have been, just like in taxes in the US, there's this sliding scale. If a certain revenue, you're at this tax bracket, and reducing sliding scale tax bracket in terms of the same thing should have happened with businesses. If you're a business that's making under $1 million, you shouldn't be paying the same tariffs that, you know, Apple's paying.
I agree. Chelsea, we need to get you into politics because that makes a lot of sense to me.
No, I politics no, but happy to give an opinion.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, before we close out the show, we've got something called the Fire Round. It's 4 questions we ask every guest at the end of the episode. If you're familiar with these, this is your third time on the show, but are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. What is your favorite book?
Favorite book? I mean, there's a lot of them. I read one recently called the I think it's The Sorrow and the Pity this
Mhm.
year, which is very well written. Really like that book. Business books, it's the one thing. It's always been the one thing. But yeah, for business books, it's the one thing. I recommend it to so many people.
Mhm. Very good. What are your hobbies?
Reading. I like reading. I used to garden, but I haven't done that as much. spending time with my son. We're doing, a lot of pool time. He's 9 months old, so he's going to a swim class. And I like cooking. I don't get as much time for it, but yeah, cooking and reading, I would say.
Very nice. Next question. What do you think sets apart successful e-commerce entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think, as cheesy as it sounds, mindset, just believing that it's going to happen and it might not be the path that you think. If you believe in the destination and you're constantly putting yourself at the destination, this is where I'm going, this is the end result, and not getting stuck on all of the minutia, that starts to open up opportunities that maybe you didn't originally see. So,
Mm.
I never thought I would be developing and, selling a software, but I knew that, that I was going to achieve something. I knew that selling products on Amazon wasn't my final destination. I I liked helping people to sell products and to succeed in business more. And so that ended up with me getting into software. I knew it would leap into something else. And so having that destination mindset and that mindset of knowing that it was going to happen, and then not being so rigid with it has to be this, it has to be this product, it has to be this business, it has to be this partner. Those types of things I think get you stuck in um, taking the failure personally because that thing didn't work out, rather than the actual goal being more of an abstract.
Very good. I really like that answer. And final question, if people are interested in So Stocked or getting in touch with you, what is the best way?
Mhm. Yep. I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to sostock.com. That'll take them to the SPS Commerce website, our page on the SPS Commerce website. So sostock.com is where I would go to find that. And then I guess just my email. People, kind of giving out their emails. It's not always taken. People aren't always taken up on it, but it's Chelsea at carbon6.io still. And you can reach out to me. I'm happy to chat. I love to talk profitability and give tools for that. So anyone who wants to reach out can go ahead.
Outstanding. Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for your time today and looking forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Before you go, we wanted to share a new service that Ken and I have been using called Getita that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida.com, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?